There's something strange about what people call higher consciousness. Everyone wants to climb toward it, as if it were a mountaintop hidden behind the clouds, reserved for the few who meditate long enough, pray hard enough, or suffer deeply enough to deserve it. We picture enlightened beings as distant, glowing figures, hovering above ordinary life, untouched by confusion, immune to chaos. And yet, the very image of reaching higher reveals the trap. Because what if consciousness doesn't exist up there at all? What if it's not a prize waiting in some secret dimension, but the quiet background of everything you've ever experienced? The whisper behind every thought, the space between every breath. People chase transcendence as though they must escape the world to find truth. They imagine an ascent, a ladder beyond emotion, beyond desire, beyond imperfection. But in doing so, they turn awakening into another ambition, another game of the ego pretending to dissolve itself. The irony is profound. The seeker creates the very distance they're trying to cross. The more you chase awareness, the more you affirm the illusion that you're separate from it. Perhaps what we call higher consciousness isn't higher at all. It is deeper, simpler, closer than your own heartbeat. It doesn't need to be achieved, because it's already the one who's watching you search. It's the stillness underneath your longing for stillness, the silence beneath the sound of your questions. What hides it isn't to complexity or ignorance. It is the constant effort to find it. Like water searching for wetness, the mind searching for awareness can only exhaust itself until it surrenders and realizes the truth was never hidden. It was you, looking for yourself in all directions, but here. Most seekers imagine enlightenment as an expansion, a radiant unfolding of power and perception, a kind of inner fireworks that turns ordinary life into something transcendent. They picture themselves glowing with wisdom, seeing through walls of illusion, walking above the noise of the world like sages wrapped in golden light. But awakening has nothing to do with gaining anything. It's not an upgrade, it's a dismantling. It's the gentle but devastating realization that everything you thought defined you, your name, your history, your opinions, your self-image, are just patterns of thought echoing in a vast silence. What falls away is not truth, but decoration. What disappears was never you to begin with. We are taught to measure growth by accumulation, more knowledge, more clarity, more success, more high vibrations. Yet consciousness deepens not by stacking concepts, but by releasing them. The ego fears this because it feeds on identity. It wants to improve, not dissolve. But real awakening is subtraction, not refinement. It is the undoing of the mental scaffolding that claims ownership over experience. As these constructs fade, what remains isn't emptiness, it's spaciousness. Awareness reveals itself as what's been here all along, quietly observing the theater of thought. Enlightenment is not a crown placed upon the mind, it's the falling of masks that were never needed. It feels less like victory and more like surrender, a disarming honesty that strips you bare of everything false. You don't expand into infinity, you recognize you were never contained. You don't rise above the world, you realize the world was never beneath you. What dissolves is the illusion of becoming. What remains is what has always been. Awareness itself, unadorned, unbounded, free. Imagine the sky after a storm, the air heavy with silence, the scent of rain still lingering. For hours, maybe days, the clouds ruled the horizon, thick and endless, and you began to believe the sun was gone. Yet as the storm softens, the wind shifts and those grey veils begin to dissolve. Slowly, light pours through, not a new light, but the one that was always there. Higher consciousness feels exactly like that moment. It isn't about summoning brightness. It's the quiet discovery that the light never left. What fades is not darkness but obstruction, the mental fog of thought, fear, and identity that once seemed so real. The process of awakening is not a construction project, it's an unlayering. Each idea you held about who you are falls away like evaporating mist. You don't gain clarity, clarity gains you. The stillness of awareness reveals itself, untouched by the turbulence that passed overhead. And as it does, the world doesn't change. Your eyes do. The trees don't become more vivid. You finally notice their vividness. The air doesn't grow purer. You finally breathe it without commentary. This is what higher consciousness feels like, a sudden simplicity. The noise of interpretation quiets, and existence shines through every crack of perception. You realize that reality was never veiled, only your seeing was. The mind is the cloud, not the sky. When thought calms, the expanse behind it becomes visible. Vast, radiant, self-luminous. The light was never earned, never granted. It was only rediscovered, waiting patiently behind the storm of yourself. We live as though our thoughts were faithful mirrors of reality, as if words could contain the infinite pulse of existence. We build entire worlds from symbols, names, concepts, definitions, and then mistake those shadows for the thing itself. We talk about love and think we've felt it. We describe freedom and believe we've tasted it. But thoughts are echoes, not the sound. They point toward life the way a map points toward a mountain, useful for direction, fatal for experience. You can study the contour lines of Everest forever and still never feel the wind that cuts across its peak. In the same way, you can think endlessly about awakening and remain asleep within the dream of thought. Higher consciousness begins when this illusion cracks, when you start to see that no description can substitute for direct contact. Words can guide, inspire, even awaken a longing. But they are not the truth. The truth is what happens in the silence after the word ends. It's what remains when the commentary falls away. Awareness doesn't think about the world, it touches it. It tastes, it breathes, it feels without the interference of interpretation. To live through the mind is to live behind a screen of abstractions. To awaken is to tear that screen and meet reality naked, unmediated. The tragedy of ordinary consciousness is that it trades the living world for a conceptual one, the vivid immediacy of this moment for the safety of mental definitions. The awakened see the difference. They know that the word flower kills the fragrance, that the word God cannot hold the mystery. To awaken is to return to the freshness that was there before language claimed ownership of life, to stop talking about the river and finally step into it. When the commentary of the mind finally grows quiet, what remains is not emptiness, but an astonishing stillness that was always there. Awareness itself. It doesn't arrive with fireworks or divine choirs. It doesn't announce itself as enlightenment or ecstasy. It is ordinary, yet more vast than anything you could ever imagine. It's the quiet field in which thoughts come and go, the invisible space behind every sound, sensation, and emotion. You begin to realize that all experiences, joy, fear, success, pain, rise and fade within this same boundless presence. But the presence itself never moves. It has no beginning, no boundary, no story. At first, the silence feels unfamiliar, almost unsettling. The mind wants to fill it, to name it, to claim it as another experience to possess. But awareness cannot be possessed because it is what's doing the possessing. It is what's seeing, not what is seen. The moment you stop trying to grasp it, you discover that you were never outside it. You are not a person who has awareness. You are awareness dreaming of being a person. The thoughts that once defined you begin to lose their authority, dissolving like ripples on the surface of an infinite sea. From this realization, everything softens. The struggle to control life fades because you see that life was never separate from the one who experiences it. The watcher and the watched are one process. This is not a belief or philosophy. It's a direct seeing. Awareness isn't something you achieve. It's what's been quietly watching through your eyes since the beginning. When you touch this stillness, you understand. Consciousness isn't inside you, you are inside it. And in that instant, everything simply is. Silent, infinite, complete. Watch a child explore the world, not yet burdened by definitions, not yet imprisoned by ideas. They touch everything, taste everything, and stare in complete wonder at things adults no longer notice. The rhythm of rain on glass, the shadow of their own hand on the wall, the sound of a bird echoing in the distance. For them, reality isn't filtered through language or judgment. It's direct, raw, alive. There's no separation between the observer and the observed, no inner voice analyzing every moment. Experience simply happens, whole and immediate. That's what we call innocence. But it isn't naivety. It's consciousness unclouded. As we grow, that immediacy fades. We're taught to name before we feel, to think before we see. A flower stops being a miracle and becomes a category. Rose. The sunset becomes beautiful instead of beyond words. Slowly, we trade contact for commentary. We build layers of interpretation to feel safe. Education, morality, identity, until the world feels distant, muted, domesticated. We live surrounded by meanings and yet starved of direct experience. Awakening is not about returning to childhood, but about remembering the quality of perception that once came naturally. It's rediscovering the world before thought divides it. When awareness deepens, a glass of water becomes infinite again. A breeze carries unspeakable intelligence, and the ordinary reveals its quiet divinity. This isn't nostalgia, it's clarity. The awakened don't regress, they unlearn. They peel away the crust of conditioning until life regains its original freshness. The world doesn't change, it simply stops being filtered. What remains is what has always been here, vibrant, immediate, unspeakably alive. At a certain depth of stillness, the illusion of being a separate self begins to dissolve. You start to sense that awareness doesn't live behind your eyes. Your eyes live within awareness. The boundaries that once felt so solid, inside and outside, self and other, mind and world, begin to blur. It's not that the body disappears, but that it's seen as a movement of something larger, like a wave rising from the sea. The thought, I am in the universe, shifts into something infinitely more intimate. I am the universe, momentarily aware of itself. Every breath, every heartbeat, every flicker of perception becomes a dialogue between form and formlessness. The ego once believed it was the center, the pilot navigating reality. But in this deeper seeing, the pilot is revealed to be another ripple in the ocean. The intelligence that turns sunlight into leaves, that spins galaxies and beats your heart, is the same force moving through every cell, every star, every silence. You are not observing existence from the outside, you are existence observing itself from within. Even your thoughts are the universe thinking. Temporary patterns of vibration in a vast, living field. From this perspective, nothing stands apart. The tree, the wind, the laughter of a stranger, the ache in your chest, all of it is one seamless expression. Unity doesn't mean sameness, it means inseparability. The ocean doesn't prefer one wave over another, it simply moves. And when this truth settles into the bones, the fear of isolation dissolves. There is no need to belong, because belonging was never lost. What you truly are is not in the world is in you. The self you've defended for so long, the one endlessly narrating, comparing, planning, fearing, begins to crumble when seen clearly. That voice in your head saying, I'm thinking, I'm doing, I'm deciding, is not who you are. It's a character in consciousness, a mask worn by awareness to navigate the play of life. It claims ownership over every experience, proudly declaring, this is my thought, my success, my failure. But when you look closely, you see that this owner never truly existed. It's a story written by memory, a flickering pattern of language arising in silence. Thoughts appear, choices unfold, life happens, all spontaneously. The I that takes credit is just an echo arriving late to the event. When this is realized, something radical occurs. The center collapses. The mind loses its throne, and yet nothing is lost. You begin to sense that the real you has never acted, never thought, never aged. It has only witnessed a vast stillness behind the noise. The body moves, emotions rise, conversations happen, but the awareness beneath remains untouched, changeless, unbothered by the drama it observes. Even the search for awakening was only the dream of this character, another movement within the same silent space. To see this is not to become detached or hollow. On the contrary, it's the first true intimacy with life. Without the false self in the way, experience flows freely, unclaimed, unresisted. You laugh without reason, cry without shame, live without guarding the illusion of me. What remains is simplicity, life aware of itself, playing through form. The real you doesn't need defending because it cannot be harmed. It was never born, and it will never die. It is the silent witness, eternal, unmoved, watching the river of existence pass through its infinite reflection. In higher consciousness, the great opposites of life stop fighting and begin to reveal their hidden harmony. What once seemed like conflict, joy and sorrow, creation and destruction, gain and loss, becomes a rhythm, a single pulse beating through every form. You begin to see that light cannot exist without darkness, that life draws its shape from death, that every rise implies a fall. The ocean doesn't choose between crest and trough, it becomes both in one motion. Likewise, the universe doesn't play favorites, it breathes in opposites, weaving them into a seamless dance. To the awakened mind, this isn't a theory, it's directly visible. Every pleasure already contains its end, every ending births a beginning. What you used to call tragedy becomes the soil of renewal. This insight doesn't erase pain, it transforms it. When you see that all phenomena are two sides of the same current, resistance fades. You stop trying to cling to the good and avoid the bad, realizing that each depends on the other for its existence. There is no day without night, no self without other, no sound without silence. The opposites are not enemies, they are the way reality breathes. And in this recognition a deep peace arises, not the peace of escape, but the peace of understanding. From this view, morality, success, even meaning itself, lose their rigidity. They become fluid, alive, contextual, reflections of the eternal balance at play. You begin to live as the ocean rather than as a single wave, embracing both the rise and the fall as sacred expressions of the same totality. This is the heart of higher consciousness, the end of opposition, the realization that every contrast was always part of one indivisible whole. When this understanding dawns, life stops feeling like a staircase towards some distant enlightenment. The endless striving, the comparison, the hunger to become something more, loses its grip. You realize there is nowhere to get to, because everything you've ever sought has always been unfolding right here in this breath, in this heartbeat, in this simple act of being. The search that once propelled you, that restless urge to reach higher consciousness, to be free, to transcend, dissolves like mist under the morning sun. And in its absence, something extraordinary reveals itself. A quiet, effortless aliveness that was never missing, only overlooked. When you no longer live in pursuit, the smallest things reclaim their sacredness. The hum of the refrigerator, the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the sound of your own breathing, they become revelations. You no longer interpret them, you inhabit them. Each sensation is a reminder that you were never apart from existence. Even pain, boredom or confusion lose their heaviness because they're seen as waves in the same ocean, movements of the same consciousness that animates everything. Life becomes simple again, not because problems vanish, but because you stop measuring them against an imaginary perfection. You stop postponing peace for a future version of yourself. The destination you were seeking turns out to be this: the immediacy of being aware, right now. The ego calls this surrender. Awareness calls it homecoming. And in that homecoming, action becomes spontaneous, relationships flow with ease, and existence feels whole. The seeker disappears, and life, vibrant, ordinary, miraculous, finally begins to live itself through you. In the stillness of awareness, time quietly dissolves. The past no longer reaches you, and the future loses its promise. What remains is the eternal present, vast, silent, unbroken. Every memory, every anticipation, every movement of thought is seen as a ripple on the surface of this timeless expanse. You realize that life is not a line stretching forward, but a single infinite moment expressing itself as change. Birth and death, beginnings and endings, are merely the mind's way of slicing eternity into pieces it can understand. In higher consciousness, you no longer chase tomorrow or cling to yesterday, because you see that both exist only as ideas happening now. The moment you stop trying to become something, the truth reveals itself. You were never incomplete. Awareness doesn't move through time, time moves through awareness. It was never about arriving somewhere, but awakening to the fact that you've never left. This is eternity, not endless duration, but the timeless presence silently watching it all unfold. Stop chasing the light as though it were somewhere far away, waiting to be found. Be still for a moment, and you'll sense that the glow you seek has never left. It is not a radiance that comes and goes, but the quiet luminosity of awareness itself, the very thing perceiving these words. The mind keeps searching for enlightenment as an object, something to reach or hold, but what you truly are cannot be found because it was never lost. The search keeps the illusion alive. When seeking falls silent, what remains is the listener, the presence that has been here all along, steady, unmoving, vast. So pause. Feel the breath entering your body, the pulse beneath your skin, the hum of existence around you. Everything you've been trying to awaken to is already happening in this instant. There is no gate to pass through, no higher state to enter, only the recognition that awareness itself is what you've been calling the path. Stop listening for it, and you'll realize it's the one listening. Stop trying to see, and you'll notice you are what's seeing. The journey ends not in distance but in depth, in the simple eternal realization that you have always been home.